All right, folks, coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered for Thursday, February 7th, 2019, the Virginia political dumpster fire continues. Now a top Republican in their state has been associated with racist pictures and slurs in his college yearbook. He edited. And Senator Kamala Harris has called for an investigation of the sexual assault claim against Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. All right, a new bill introduced today in Congress would require corporations to reveal the gender and race of senior executives. The man who introduced the bill, Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York, would join us live. This morning, at the National Prayer Breakfast, Donald Trump said that faith led to the abolition of civil rights. The abolition of civil rights. Was it just a mistake, or did it reveal his own beliefs? Oh, yeah, you know we're going to deal with that. Also, y'all, the mother of Jordan Day was a teenager killed by a white man for playing his music too loud, is now a member of Congress from Georgia. Lucy McBath spoke out on gun violence at a congressional hearing. We've got her powerful video. Today is Black HIV/AIDS Day, and Dr. Cleo Monago is here with a proven effective plan to stop the spread of the disease among African Americans. And a veteran says he suffered a concussion when attacked by a police officer as he was peacefully filming an incident involving his cousin on his own property. We'll show you that shocking video. And Gucci tried to sell a $900 sweater that looked like somebody wearing blackface. What is wrong with y'all white people? It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin on the filter. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the biz, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, when you talk about Wall Street, we talk about corporate America. The reality is there are few African Americans who sit on boards of directors or also senior executives of these companies. In many cases, they're run still today, 2019, by white men. In Congress, Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York has launched a bill called the Improving Corporate Governance Through Diversity Act of 2019. It will require public companies to disclose the gender, race, ethnicity, and veteran status of the board of directors, their nominees, and senior executive officers. And this is critically important because for a lot of these companies, they don't want you to know exactly what's going on. Joining us right now is Congressman Gregory Meeks. So, Congressman, why is this important? Why did you say a bill is needed for this to happen?
Because people were not revealing who was on their boards, who was in their C-suites, and the diversity wasn't there, is not there. And many people who are investing money, they want to make decisions based upon information. So now they know that if someone is not diversifying, they may not want to invest their money in these companies. And we've got to make sure it makes good business sense for these businesses to have people in the C-suites and the board of directors, because their businesses should be doing business with people that look like America. And America includes people of color, women, and it should be veterans. And now, we've had success in making sure that everybody understood. In fact, the Chamber of Commerce has even endorsed this bill.
I was at Andrea Hoffman's Silicon Valley Cultural Shift Conference in New York a couple of years ago, and that was a brother who works with in the state of New York, and he said what they do is they question potential money managers as it relates to African Americans and others who are working in their offices, who are on the investment side, the banking side, the bond side, the legal side, because their deal is if you have largely white folks who are coming saying, let's invest the state's money, he said they want to ensure that other folks are participating in this process.
That's absolutely right. You know, when you look at like city pension funds, which is basically taxpayer money, that people want to make sure that people who are investing those funds, number one, that they reflect them also, and the places where they're investing them. There's diversity in those groups and those companies, and Wall Street needs to change in that regard. Oftentimes I would go visit Wall Street and try to find what their diversity was like, and I've had CEOs can't find anyone, or at one case they went and brought a receptionist because that was the only person that they could find. And so if someone like me, who's a member of Congress, can't find out or don't know because they can't post it, then how could an investor? And that's why we put this bill together and worked hard over a period of time. It was building and trying to make sure that we have something that we can get passed. And I know this bill will pass the House. We've got a Senator Menendez is sponsoring it in the Senate side. We've got Republicans that are looking at it also, because it was significant that we got, for example, the NAACP that supports this bill. As I indicated, the Chamber of Commerce support this bill. So it's a bill that we think that we'll be able to put on the president's desk and see whether he signs it or not.
The thing that really jumps out on this, and again, for people who don't really pay attention to all this sort of stuff, is I think back to Maynard Jackson when he was mayor of Atlanta. I'm reading the biography of Robert Holmes about him right now. And that was one of the issues when he became mayor. When he called the banks in, he said, look, the city is putting money into your banks. Y'all better go find some black folks to put on your boards of directors. And many of them, they were upset, they were angry, and they said, oh, we don't know any blacks who even qualified. He said, well, we're going to pull our city money out of your banks. And the reality is, when you think about a city like New York, significant black and Hispanic folks who live there, who also work, this is where you leverage your power to force change. The reason Atlanta is the city it is today for black business is because of Maynard Jackson, followed by Andrew Young, followed by Maynard Jackson, followed by Bill Campbell and Shirley Franklin and Kasim Reed. They have used political power to force economic change.
Absolutely. I just came back from Atlanta, and to see still what they're doing now around the universities, whether it's Spelman in particular, which I was visiting, and see what's happening there with some of the same groups that started around Maynard Jackson's time. And now what we're saying to financial institutions, when you diverse those boards, and we have individuals, for example, making sure that we have community reinvestment act that we're going to modernize. They know to make sure there's investments that's being done in every community, but communities that need development. They know to make sure that small business loans are going to diverse individuals, minority businesses, so that they have access to capital. They also understand the needs and concerns of various communities, where if you don't have them on your board, then you don't know that these banks will invest in certain areas. So that's why this is significant. And that's why, especially when you talk about city and state pension funds, we've got to, they need this information so they can say that we're not going to invest. One of the ways that we was able to, for example, going way back to get the end apartheid in South Africa, was saying that we knew that there was no folks there, so that was a disinvestment because we didn't like what was going on. Well, with the pension funds, now we can say to companies and to banks that if you're not diverse, if we don't see that, we're not going to invest any money into your facility, into your institution, and then that will have a substantial effect on them, because a lot of the banks, the way that they survive is based upon public pension funds. And so without them, they will not be able to receive the kinds of rewards financially that they have for managing those funds.
All right. Well, we certainly appreciate this bill. Hopefully it gets passed in the House, in the Senate, and Trump signs it, because it is vital when it comes to information, and information is power. Congressman Gregory Meeks, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right, folks, let's talk about Virginia. Today we learned that the Republican leader of the Senate was the editor of a yearbook at the Virginia Military Institute, a private high school. The yearbook featured pictures like this. These pictures were first uncovered by the Virginia Pilot newspaper. State Senator Tommy Norment was the managing editor of the VMI bomb in 1968, the first year black students were admitted. Now, beyond the pictures, there are racial slurs. Norment said he was one of 7 working on the yearbook, and he didn't endorse or associate himself with what was on every page. Way to take responsibility. Now, there had been no major new developments today, but let's review the scandals affecting the top Democrats in Virginia. And you remember that Governor Ralph Northam's medical school yearbook page has one person in blackface and one in Klan robes on his page. There are other pages that have folks in blackface, and Northam has been quiet since his terrible Saturday news conference, and there have been no new calls for his resignation, which is hardly surprising because of all the local and national Democratic polls have already done so. Now, silence, too, from Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax after the woman who accused him of sexual assault back in 2004 detailed the encounter from her point of view. Now, some national Democrats, like Senator Kamala Harris, have suggested the account from Dr. Vanessa Tyson is credible and called for an investigation. As for Attorney General Mark Herring, who admitted that he, too, had worn blackface, he might survive for 3 reasons. He came forward before getting caught, did significant outreach to other Democratic politicians. If the governor and the lieutenant governor resign, he would be the one man between the governor's mansion and the Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates. Okay, unless anyone think Virginia's racist past is in the past, get this, if Virginia police sergeant assigned to monitoring protesters around Governor Northam's racist yearbook photo has been suspended for having possible ties to white nationalist groups. And then, of course, Jerry Falwell Jr., he had to get in on this. He commented on this. My family has lived in Virginia since the 1600s. Virginia would never elect people like Northam, Fairfax, Herring, Warner, or Kane without the votes of federal government employees in Nova. They are all an embarrassment to Virginia, and the founders never intended the District of Columbia to sprawl out into Virginia. Okay, here's the problem with that. Actually, the District of Columbia used to actually be a part of Virginia. Yeah, it actually extended out where Alexandria and Arlington, Virginia are today. And why did they split? Because they thought D.C. was going to outlaw slavery. See, it's amazing what happens that we also talk about Jerry Falwell Jr., whose family empire was built around white supremacy.
Yep.
Okay, let's just be real clear. All right, but then there's the same Jerry Falwell Jr., who, when Reverend William Barber in the Poor People's Campaign, when they were actually having an event in Lynchburg, Virginia, where Liberty University is located, told the Lynchburg Police Department, the campus police department, if any of them step foot on our campus, arrest them. Yeah, Jerry Falwell Jr. said, arrest Christians who are fighting for poor people. Jerry Falwell Jr., you can kiss my ass. All right, let's go to our panel. I'm not going, somebody got to go and say it. Let's introduce our panel, Dr. Greg Carr, Chair, Department of Afro-American Studies, Howard University. We also, of course, have C.J. Jordan, CEO, Jordan Management Group, A. Scott Bolden, former Chair, National Bar Association, PAC, and also Cleo Monago, behavioral health expert. So let's just go ahead and just, let's deal with first with Fairfax. So Senator Kamala Harris calls for an investigation. Okay, so here's the question. What's the investigation?
Well, I mean, we know Kamala Harris is running for president, so she said what she needed to say. There were 2 people involved, by both of them, Dr. Tyson and Justin Fairfax. Only 2 people were there. Yep. So I guess what, she want to interview them both, ask me to interview them both, and then at the end say it's not conclusive? She's just trying to score some political points.
CJ, what do you make of this? Because again, when you look at this, we discussed this yesterday. Tyson, in her statement, said it happened in 2004, Democratic National Convention. She told no one. Then she told her friends in 2017. So you don't. There's nothing that, unlike other cases where somebody said, "Oh, I told a friend immediately after it happened," or "I told a therapist." You have nothing like that. So when Senator Harris says there should be an investigation, what's the investigation?
I think personally, again, as the handsome gentleman to my left stated, yes, with Senator Harris, she is running for president. But at the end of the day, I think, Dr. Tyson, she deserves to be heard. It is a he say, she say, because there are no witnesses. But then it brings back to the notion that women are saying that a lot of times these incidents are suppressed. And sometimes they're out of fear, out of a lot of things, as Senator Joni Ernest showed, that they don't necessarily go forward in those first couple of years because they are embarrassed. So I think the question begins, where will an investigation go? How should it be started? And then you also deal with the fact that you now have another congressman who said that she has shared this information with her Senator Bobby Scott of Virginia.
Well, but the first thing you got to do is you got to have someone willing to investigate. You have to have a claim. You have to have a complaint filed, and that would be in Boston. And the 15-year statute of limitations for that type of investigation was still in place, so the statute of limitations is out. But this individual, the complainant or the accuser, has not filed a complaint. And it's been several years. So the investigation wouldn't be a federal investigation. It would be a state investigation.
That is correct.
Now, the Virginia has its state commissions, or the Senate or the House could investigate Justin Fairfax's conduct here. But what would the enforceability be, because it happened in Boston? Now, they could get or try to get corroboration. But the accuser's biggest challenge here is that she didn't file a complaint. She certainly has talked about it to a few opportunities she's had to, but then she did a program, as I understand it, on this kind of
there was an interview she did in 2007 where she talked about the issue of sexual abuse.
Exactly.
And she talked about her father molesting her. And in that interview, she did not bring up what happened in 2004.
Now, that doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? But when you're doing these investigations, I'm a former sex crimes prosecutor, when you're doing these investigations, you look for corroboration. You look for inconsistencies, both the accused or the accuser, and then you have to come, if you can't get any of that going, if it's just his word against hers, you assess their credibility, and then because the prosecutor has discretion, right, then you exercise your discretion. You either go forward with a tough case or decide to decline to prosecute.
But here's what you have.
So we're a long way from that.
But here's what you have here, Cleo. You have Democratic women who are saying, always believe the woman. A member of Congress who beat Barbara Comstock, Democrat in the House, she said, I believe Dr. Tyson. You have what Senator Kamala Harris said, she's very credible. You have folks who are saying that Fairfax should resign. And so you're saying, okay, wait a minute. So he should resign, but the question is, he's saying it was consensual. She's saying it wasn't. Still, I keep asking that question, what is the investigation if there's nothing that's literally there?
Well, I don't think there's anything to investigate except for perspective and people's biases.
Because what about other witnesses?
When people say
they can investigate other witnesses,
that we should trust women, that's a bias. Because not all women tell the truth. Not all women are angels who can all be trusted, though sexual violence is a problem. But something interesting also here is that she talked to people about her father molesting her. That's usually more difficult than talking about somebody else outside the family molesting them. So she went there, but didn't go there.
Yeah, but
also she went to Washington Post, I believe it was, to talk about this sometime.
She went to the Washington Post.
Right.
The Washington Post did an interview with her. Washington Post decided not to. They also interviewed Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax right before he got inaugurated, and they said they could not corroborate his story or her story. There was nobody for them to talk to.
Now, when did she write this narrative? When did she write this narrative that was on all over the media yesterday?
Her lawyers did that. She hired lawyers.
She said,
this is very recent, right?
She said that initially she saw a picture of him when it was in October 2017, the month before the election when he ran for lieutenant governor and won, and saw it, and that brought back the flood of emotions. And she said she began to tell friends what happened in 2004.
Well,
no,
like I said before,
here's the deal. We know statistically only 2 to 6% of everyone that accuses of another person of a crime, including sexual assault, only 2 to 6% of them statistically ultimately are found to be lying about it, right? Another 90%, the rest of the 90% are telling the truth. So we know that
we don't
she's
know which
believable.
one. We don't know which one she is.
No,
we don't know where the percentile
the odds are
she falls.
Something may have happened, if you will.
No. Hold on, one second.
Right.
1 second. Something did happen.
Something did happen.
One second. Hold on. You can make the point when I finish. Something did happen. She says he forced oral sex. He says it was consensual. What we don't have here, we don't have him saying nothing happened. She's saying something did happen. He's saying it was consensual. She's saying it was forced oral sex.
So the act took place.
Something took place.
The act took place.
Right.
The issue here, which I keep asking, is that if there is an investigation, if you have a newspaper like the Washington Post who's been covering a lot of these stories, say they could not find anyone to corroborate her story or corroborate his story.
Right.
She says, I told no one about what happened. Clearly, he didn't tell anybody, hey, I got a blowjob. All right? I don't know who goes around actually saying that. So the question is, you're now left with her making allegation, him, lieutenant governor, and folks calling for him to resign.
Right.
So the question is, should he resign based upon an allegation that he says he differs from her? CJ, then Scott.
Well, the question becomes, she also stated that after the incident that she avoided him the rest of the convention. And so without any other things that you could say, you know, if there's no video of that she rushed out of the room and, you know, in disarray or harmed, then you have to deal with, okay, who's going to go back to 2004 and who did she work with to see that she actively avoided Justin in their work environment?
The statistical information I just quoted was showing that that something happened and that she's telling the truth.
No, we know something happened.
I know.
The question is, they differ on what happened.
Right, but to investigate, you need an accuser. No, he shouldn't resign if it's just this allegation. And if you were going to investigate, right, if you did have an accuser and you've got an accuser, but like a formal investigation, you would interview those individuals and you would see, you would ask, are there other people you communicated this to? Did he communicate this to someone else? And interview those witnesses. Are there any documents, diaries, any writings or documents that support the allegation?
She says no. She says
all right.
She says she did.
Okay. But if you're going to have a formal one, you'd have a formal investigation that include the same thing.
Okay. So then the question is, what's that formal investigation? Does she have to file? Does she have to file something?
Yes.
Well, she has to file something.
She can file something with the Senate or with the Boston Police Department.
Oh, with the Senate.
Well, the Virginia Senate.
Okay. So she would have to go back to the Boston Police Department, which now calls into question what if there are any statute of limitations, how long is that, all of that.
She's within the statute of limitations
go ahead.
of Massachusetts
Right, but
law.
also she needs to, she stated that she avoided him. So who else were her supervisors in that work environment that she and Justin were in that will show and acknowledge?
He was working for, they were for different people.
Right.
They weren't.
But
How long ago was the Washington Post article?
No, that wasn't a Washington Post article.
I mean, the investigation for
She
an
approached the
article.
Washington Post in late 2017.
Okay.
And then they decided by early 2018 they did not have anything to corroborate the story, so therefore they did no story.
So my question would be, why didn't you file a complaint ever?
Well, either way, I mean, let's
Well, no, but she stated, hold up.
Right.
But she stated that when she saw that he could become governor, that's when she was like, this is unfair. Which also...
What was unfair? Him being governor?
Him becoming governor. So what she did...
Knowing he had conducted
So what
himself
she
that way.
did was, she shared the story with a friend in a private chat. The friend grabbed a snapshot of that, sent it to a website, and according to that website, they said she gave permission that it could be used.
Right.
I mean, at the end of the day,
Or at least the friend.
well, let's hold out the possibility of investigations, and the political damage has been done.
Exactly.
Mission accomplished by these right-wing white supremacist Breitbart crew. They're trying to take out the top 3 Democrats. Now, they probably didn't realize that their next in line
But they didn't
is a racist. Hold on. Let's be clear.
Okay.
No. The website he's talking about was run by Republican operatives.
Right.
They're the ones who published the photo of Northern.
Right.
And according to the website, right-wingers who were angry, who went to school with him, who were angry with his abortion comments, said that's why they released the photos.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
Right.
that's
journalism.
No. Come on.
Why shouldn't he report? I think that's something I would want to know.
Gotcha.
Racist sabotage.
Is it a picture with blackface?
Greg, go ahead.
No, all I'm
I don't care where it comes
Scott,
from.
all I'm gonna say is this: we know for a fact that the head of the Virginia House of Delegates is not going to resign. This is what white supremacists don't do. They don't care. Now, in Justin Fairfax's case, of course he should not resign. Let it be a full investigation. If something else comes out, fine. But the political reality is this: if and when Northern resigns, and there's some talk now that Northern could have coordinated this with him or not. But either way, to get Fairfax
To normalize this blackface.
Well, if Fairfax is elevated to governor, this may be the 3 years of his governorship, because the political reality is that when he runs, they're going to hang this around his neck like an iron chain.
But he can run for another term.
Well, and lose.
Not Northam's term, which would give him 7 years.
Well, but no, that's what I'm saying. He'll lose an election.
Final comment, CJ.
Even the Attorney General will have to step aside to do an investigation. So who are you going to have to do a fair investigation?
Oh, I couldn't care less.
Why would the Attorney General have to step aside?
The goal was character assassination.
Right.
That was the goal.
Mission accomplished.
And that was accomplished.
No question.
That was
All
the
right,
goal.
folks. At the National Prayer Breakfast today, Donald Trump. I know. Donald Trump and National Prayer Breakfast. Really?
Right.
Long
Y'all.
as the evangelical.
It didn't even burst into flames.
Check this out. This is what he said.
Our Father who art in heaven.
Many of our greatest strides, from gaining our independence to abolition of civil rights to extending the vote for women, have been led by people of faith and started in prayer.
I want y'all to run that back, just in case y'all missed that. Press play.
Many of our greatest strides, from gaining our independence to abolition of civil rights to extending the vote for women, have been led by people of faith and started in prayer.
Now, apparently that was supposed to be a reference to the abolition of slavery. I guess he didn't want to even use the word slavery, so he substituted civil rights as if those two things are interchangeable.
In his mind.
I don't know, Roland. I think, a couple of things. Number one, clearly Trump is not well. His laborious breathing, his kind of slow pace. Exactly. And he was trying to stay on teleprompter. Now, we've seen this consistently with him. He cannot read teleprompters, and he never admits whether he's making a mistake. It's psychological for him. I believe that instead of to, that read of. In other words, when he said abolition, it was probably comma, of, see how he paused? It probably said of civil rights. In other words, of abolition, of civil rights, but he never backs up. So he said of abolition, he missed the word and said of civil rights. In other words, and he never goes back. I think that was just a typical stupid Trump can't read the teleprompter mistake.
Or that he couldn't put two and two together when deciding that.
That's right.
Say, I can't say that.
That's right.
This has got to be wrong.
If you look at it, Scott, I think you're right.
You know
if you look at it, you can see him.
That doesn't
he looks pained.
Absolve.
He looks pained.
That doesn't absolve him.
It doesn't.
Of responsibility.
So the issue, CJ, is here is that this is an administration that's got a serious problem with civil rights. If you go from the Department of Justice to HUD, to Department of Education, to every single department, there literally is an undermining of civil rights in this administration, which is undeniable.
I don't see that. Where is that undermining?
You don't see what?
Where is that undermining?
Can you bring me a tissue? No, bring me a tissue.
He can break down.
Bring me a tissue, please.
No, I'm...
Bring me a tissue. Give me a tissue.
You gonna make her cry?
I need you to clean your glasses.
I don't need to clean my glasses out before
He put the napkin down.
CJ, my Lord.
There it is.
Help me, Jesus.
My Lord. The Department of Education.
Lord have mercy.
The rolling back on the civil rights when it comes to the suspensions of children. When it comes to sexual assault on campuses.
Come on, brother.
When it comes to the HUD, to the cities, y'all don't have to turn in your plans that will let us know how you're going to eradicate housing discrimination, because that's just too much work for y'all.
Consent decrees.
When you talk about
police.
Yes, consent decrees. When Jeff Sessions immediately after coming in goes to Baltimore, tells a federal judge, we want to pull out of the Baltimore consent decree, when the mayor of Baltimore, the police commissioner of Baltimore says, yo, we're cool with it. When they tried to say we don't want a consent decree in Chicago, and the Attorney General of Chicago, Lisa Madigan, had to actually step forward and say, no, we're going to have a consent decree. When Jeff Sessions says, oh, consent decrees are hurting the morale of police departments, we're going to pull back in these. When one of his last acts before walking out of the door after Trump fired him was to make it harder for future consent decrees for the Department of Justice. Shall I continue?
Oh,
Section 2 of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. The Department.
Y'all take it. Go ahead.
The Department of Justice did not file one Section 2 challenge.
I'm gonna take me a cough drop.
No, I'm just saying. The sitting Attorney General today said, "I'm not going to appear before Congress until you all remove this subpoena." These people are flaunting their hatred of civil rights and people who look like us. Now, that was just a few.
So what are you trying to convince her of?
From the prosecution of voter suppression cases in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Texas, and ask for the cases to be dismissed, leaving the private companies, or rather the nonprofit companies that are fighting voter suppression in those jurisdictions, leaving them alone to fight it without having the strong backing of DOJ, which makes a difference with federal judges in federal court when it comes to legitimacy and credibility in putting forth statistics and historical records to convince the judge that they need to redo these lines, or they need to throw out these plans that they put forward, including opening up more voting places over the weekend.
Can I not see that we didn't gave you 6-7?
Yeah. Well, again, like I stated, and thank you for this too.
You haven't used it yet, though.
And I'm not going to use it because, one, we haven't rolled back anything. I think one of the things that you have to look at with this particular administration is
consent decrees and voter suppression, withdrawing from those.
No,
that's clear evidence of their resistance to being repugnant to civil rights and voting rights, for that matter.
I truly believe when it comes with consent decrees, those consent decrees need to be reviewed and updated every 3 years.
Wait, there are
CJ.
Let me finish. You gave me a tissue.
CJ, you said those, you said those consent decrees.
Yes, those.
Which ones?
In every city, whether it's Baltimore or Chicago,
wait,
Cleveland.
CJ, let me help you.
So
no, CJ, I'm gonna help you before you continue.
No.
Because see, right now you better write some checks. Your ass can't cash.
I got a big ass,
no,
so I can cash them.
Guess what? I'm gonna help you, CJ.
Black TV right here.
CJ, the consent decree in Baltimore had not even been agreed to. Had not even been signed by the federal judge before Jeff Sessions wanted to pull out completely. So when you say it needs to be updated, no, hold up. He went in, but the federal judge is like, no. So when you say it needs to be updated, he doesn't want them at all. Jeff Sessions does not want any consent.
Oh, Bill Barr. Okay, let's talk about Bill Barr. Bill Barr and Cleo, like you say, Black HIV Day. Remember when they locked up all those Haitians? They were in the ocean, stopping Haitians from coming here. That was when Bill Barr was the Attorney General. And then they locked them in Guantanamo Bay. And then they segregated the Haitians with HIV.
So
they created the world's first HIV camp. Oh no, come on. And that's the dude they voting on today.
And that was at a point in time when we were on heightened alert.
Throw the Haitians under the bus.
No, I'm not going to throw no Haitians under the bus.
High alert for what? Invasions from Haiti?
No.
Leading a coup d'etat?
No, go ahead.
HIV.
No, but I'm still trying to understand.
And so when we
you say there have been no rollbacks?
And say again, when it comes to consent decrees, whether whether we deal with it in Baltimore, whether we deal with it in Chicago, whether we deal with it in Cleveland, they need to be reviewed. They need to have more input from law enforcement, separate of the community.
What are you talking about? Do you know what a consent decree is?
No, I do.
Okay, let me help you out. Okay,
I'm educated.
Cleveland is under its second consent decree,
and I understand
in a decade. The consent decree is because of rampant, proven police abuse. So when you say this should be reviewed by law enforcement,
I say updated every 3 years. And to also take in a fair take from law enforcement.
Hold on. A fair take from law enforcement.
A view, yes.
If the Department of Justice, if it's their job to go in and investigate, in your mind, you want them to say, okay, here, Cleveland Police Department, can y'all please review our report on y'all whooping ass and then make some suggestions?
Ass whooped.
But wait.
Wow.
Oh. So you endorse police brutality?
No, I don't.
You just said
yes, you do.
But when is it appropriate for them to, quote, feed some ass?
You just said some folks get ass whooped.
I said maybe some need their ass whooped, but I don't believe it.
So are you endorsing police brutality?
What we're talking about. That's what
I don't endorse the police brutality.
But I'm trying to understand.
I do not.
If they go in, and first of all, you say the community. Do you know how they arrive at consent decrees?
Oh yeah, there it is. There it is.
Hold on, stop. Yes or no?
Yes.
How?
So based on that and the empirical data, you have an outside monitor, which makes quite a bit of money to come in and review what the city does with law enforcement. You have citizen panels that sit on this panel, and they sit down and look at all the data and determine if the law enforcement side is meeting the objectives that's been set out.
No, see, you're wrong. You're wrong.
But that's what my interpretation is.
CJ.
That's my interpretation.
You're wrong. The way you even arrive at a consent decree.
It's lawsuit.
No, you don't.
So break it down.
Let me help you, okay?
Please do.
See, right now, you're struggling.
I'm not
so
struggling.
take a break, get a drink of water. You want a cough
You don't-
drop?
no, you
I
ain't
can
got
help
no
you out.
water.
I'll bring you one out.
You don't let us have
What
it on the
happens
table.
is, when you have these cases of consent, when you have these happen, people call on the Department of Justice. In some cases, mayors
Yes.
call in the DOJ.
Yes, they
like
do.
Mitch Landrieu did in New Orleans.
Yes, they
Like
did.
Ramsey did in Philadelphia.
Yes, he did.
Come in and assess their departments.
Absolutely.
When they come into a city like Chicago, they came in and they actually did interviews.
That is
They
correct.
interview communities, people in communities, regular ordinary folks, organizational leaders. They interview police officers.
Exactly.
That's
In
correct.
Chicago, police officers admitted using the N-word.
Yes, they did.
Police officers admitted how they handle prisoners. So what then happened is the DOJ then comes back, takes that report, their assessment, and then begins to say, we believe these should be the remedies in order for this consent decree.
Absolutely.
They then have to have a federal judge
Just
sign
sign
off on that consent decree.
That is correct.
So what you're saying is you want law enforcement to have input in a report, and they already have had input in. So
No.
you want them to be able to say, strike this out. Is that what you're trying to say?
Not strike it out, but it needs to be reviewed from additional input, because if they
Oh my God! You said
If-
what is additional input?
input from law enforcement, if they are meeting goals and objectives that are set in the document, then they, along with
They
the
help
citizens,
set up the goals.
Okay.
And if they're meeting, it should be reviewed to see if those things that they've met can be either
I'm gonna help
strike
you
or
one last
down.
time. I'm help you one last time. When you're in a consent decree.
I understand.
No, CJ. When you're in a consent decree, that's what they do, how we are improving. And then the monitor
Goes
is
in and
going,
looking to look
okay,
at it.
I'm listening. And if a department is actually getting better, then the department, if they achieve a certain level, then is released from the consent decree. I'm going back to Sessions and his DOJ wants no consent decrees. They want no oversight. Their deal is the consent decrees made the cop feel so their morale hurt them. They don't want anybody challenging the local police departments.
And
Do you agree with that?
That is correct.
You agree with no consent decrees?
I believe that I do believe.
Roland,
that should be-
Y'all go ahead. Y'all go ahead.
Martin,
No, I mean, that's-
why
yeah.
are you arguing with somebody's mind is inside of a Trump Republican context and doing logic and facts? They're not relevant.
Yeah.
You just got finished listening to Trump talk about the abolition, whatever the hell he was talking about. I mean, he represents the perspective of the confused.
Yeah, or just an outright lie.
Why-
In other words,
why do you feel there have to be
we didn't take
confused?
people's choice.
Because Roland
drugs are coming in over the border. Let's just make it up.
Everybody in this
They
panel.
are coming over
yeah,
the
I
border.
just-
They
Oh yeah,
are
they're pouring over in Mexican
Everybody in this
socks
panel just
and
broke
hats
down
and-
to you
yeah,
with
of
crystal
course.
clarity
Doesn't matter.
the context here. And Roland's final question was, do you agree with what Sessions did? And you said yes.
So
Which
this-
means that all those facts that he just broke down is in the logic of it, and the fact that it could deflect violence toward black people, which has been perpetual
people need
for
their ass
police
whooped,
department.
Dr.
And some people need their ass whooped.
Scott, go ahead.
Having
relevant.
participated in a couple of these and having clients as well as witnesses in some of these, the police input is super important. And their input is omnipresent, beginning, in the middle, and at the end, and after the consent decree is signed. It's not like the police are isolated in some wheelhouse somewhere and have no input. They're constantly input because the monitor is there, because the local police department cannot be trusted.
But some people need their ass whooped.
Yep.
Period. That's the bottom
Scott,
line.
can I ask you a question, Scott?
About the police.
Can I ask you a
By
question about
who?
this, Scott? In your experience dealing
About
with
our mamas?
but are there law enforcement officials who look at these consent decrees with some form of relief? In other words, good cops, who are saying, finally, we can get in here. Because I'm thinking that's what was going on in Baltimore.
The local police department and the leaders of the police department from the conflict they have with the unions.
There you go.
That's why you bring in the feds.
Okay, CJ, you got any final comment?
No.
Okay, I thought so. All right, y'all. Jordan Davis was a 17-year-old black teenager. A white man got upset with music coming from his vehicle, and he pulled a gun and killed Jordan Davis. Happened in Jacksonville. His mother has been an activist ever since then. She's now a member of Congress. I'm talking about Lucy McBath. And now, of course, she is in Congress addressing this very issue. And so yesterday on Capitol Hill, they had a hearing dealing with the issue of mass shootings and dealing with the issue of gun violence. And so she's a powerful voice on this issue. And this is what she had to say yesterday.
Thank you so much, Congressman Johnson and Chairman Nadler, and to all the witnesses that are here today. As many of you know, gun violence is an issue that is deeply personal for me. In 2012, my son Jordan Davis was shot and killed by a man who opened fire on a car of unarmed teenagers at a gas station in Jacksonville, Florida. And Jordan was only 17 years old. Jordan would be turning 24 this week, February 16th. After my son's death, I dedicated my life to advocating for common sense gun safety solutions, but it was the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, that year that finally motivated me to run for Congress. Yesterday, I brought Jeff and Margaret Binkley to the State of the Union as my guests. Just 3 months ago, the Binkleys experienced a tragedy that no parent should ever have to endure. Their daughter, Mara Binkley, was killed when a man entered a yoga studio in Tallahassee, Florida, and shot 6 people, killing 2 before taking his own life. Mara had a bright future ahead of her and was eager to do so and eager to do good work in the world. But her dreams were cut short by a hateful man with a firearm, and she was only 21. Far too many families experience tragedies like ours every single day. The pain of losing a child to gun violence never ends. And it's in that pain that drives me to do this work to prevent gun violence. These stories are vitally important as we work to pass common sense safety legislation to keep families like ours from experiencing the horror and heartbreak brought on by gun violence. The Binkleys believe that a policy solution could prevent killings like the death of their daughter. They have become advocates for extreme risk laws often called red flag laws. That these laws can prevent both murders and suicides by temporarily removing weapons from who are a danger to themselves and to others. Our community and our nation cannot wait any longer for common sense gun safety solutions like extreme risk laws and universal background checks. And I look forward to discussing this issue further during my time for questions. Thank you.
All right, folks, here's a word from one of our partners. Are you desperate for a good night's sleep, Scott? Then listen up. Studies show lack of sleep causes stress, irritability, weight gain, and even death. But you already know how bad it is when you don't get enough sleep, don't you? And you tried sleeping pills, Scott, with their annoying and potentially dangerous side effects. Now, maybe you wasted money on the latest miracle pill, CJ, that promises a good night's sleep. Have any of these worked? If not, we might have a solution. It's convenient, inexpensive, has 0 side effects, and it flat out works. So if you want to experience deep, restful sleep starting tonight, Scott, visit www.sleepmusic.com. Now, this weird little known trick is already helping thousands of people around the world experience better sleep, deeper rest, and happier mornings. Erica would love that, Scott. And with a full 90-day money-back satisfaction guarantee, what have you got to lose? So visit sleepmusic.com to see how this amazing sleep solution can help you. Use the promo code RADIO to get $10 off. That's www.sleepmusic.com. Use the promo code RADIO to get $10 off. All right, folks, today is National Black HIV/AIDS Day, and 50% of black gay men are likely to become HIV positive. a higher percentage than any other group in America. Now, it's a huge issue that really does not get the level of attention it does across the country. And I doubt very seriously you saw any of these cable news networks and broadcast networks even deal with the issue, today being National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. Joining us right now, Dr. Cleo Monago. Of course, you know him, being a panelist on the show, and also a behavioral analyst, been very much involved in this whole issue of HIV/AIDS and African Americans. He also has developed a successful public outreach campaign to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS among African-American men. Now, Cleo, I start that point that way by saying not getting covered, because the reality is, when you still talk about this issue, it is still done through the prism of how it was set up initially, white gay men. When you look at the resources and how they're spread out across the country, they still are going to largely white gay male organizations.
Yes.
And in cities across this country, black organizations have been fighting in these cities to get more of those resources. I remember when we first met, I told Cleo about a story. There was a sister who worked in the Bush administration who had went toe-to-toe with a group of white gay male organizations out of LA. Cleo was like, "How you know about that?" I was like,
I was shocked.
And again, this was a sister, Pat Ware, who they were angry because she was talking about she was there under George W. Bush, shifting those dollars towards the black community, especially black same-gender loving brothers. And that's a fundamental issue when we talk about this issue of HIV/AIDS in African Americans, but especially same-gender loving folks.
Well, thank you for allowing me to address this issue on National Black HIV/AIDS Day. I want to do what I tend to do, which is talk about context. First of all, what you said is true, that the resources have not been coming to the community, but there has been some resources coming to the community. So the other issue that we have to deal with is not just a lack of resources, but who white people give the resources to. That's a long story, but the bottom line is that they tend to give it to black identified men who are part of the white gay community, not black folks who are part of the black community. So even when these people who are physically black get the funds, it gives the optical impression that black people are being served. These are black people selected by white people who they literally sleep with, which is a whole nother thing. And if you think I'm just being exaggerating here, the majority of the same-gender loving black people in the media, Don Lemon, Lee Daniels, Wanda Sykes, Jason, whatever his name was, who played basketball, they all have white partners. So even the media only showcases same-gender loving people who have white partners, just like the HIV/AIDS field is the same way. They use black people as surrogates and Trojan horses to turn things back around into white power through a black face. We've seen a lot of that in politics as well. But what I want to mention, though, in terms of success, and then I want to talk about the resistance to it, is that I developed a model in the 90s called critical thinking and culture affirmation. It's a behavioral change model that helps people to replace faulty reasoning with exemplary reasoning, help to increase critical thinking, and to do what I call trance breaking. As I've talked about a lot in this on your stage here, is that a lot of black people are in a post-white supremacy trauma trance. We're not fully present because we're confused by a lot of things in the society. If you want to check more about that confusion, listen to Dr. Frances Welsing and read anything she's ever written, and she breaks it down quite quickly. And there's also a sister, Leary, who talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome. I call it all a trance. We are not really able to be fully present because we're constantly playing dodgeball with our self-esteem, because we live in a culture that constantly demonstrates and implies that being black is a problem. One of the things that helps to get people to become awakened from the trance and bring them into cognitive clarity and out of emotional disorientation is if you help them to understand the dynamics in this culture that leads to the disorientation. Don't got time to get in all of that, but I'll give you a basic example of one of the things that creates disorientation in black people self-conceptually. Like I've said before in your show, when you watch television, and when you watch media, you rarely see black people loving each other. It's always a comedy or it's a special moment. It's not a reliable, ongoing phenomena on the major news stations, the major TV stations. Well, that is an example of something that implies that loving black people or being loved as black is in question. So if black people are in question about their worth, when it comes to, for example, HIV and sexual activity, if you're involved in sexual activity and you are considering self-preservation, but your value of being who you are is in question, you might learn to do away with the whole concept of protecting yourself. because you're not clear that you're valuable enough to do that. Am I making sense, or am I confusing you? Well, my model helps people to understand that those phenomena exist, how to unlearn and decode the norms in this culture that imply that black people have no value and that black men have no value. For example, HIV among black women has gone down. I don't know if any of you have seen the statistics. But black men, ever since the late 80s, have been through the roof, and now you're hearing 1 out of 2 might get HIV in 2019. It's still through the roof. Well, for example, in terms of bias in this culture and the anti-black male implications, when this dude wrote this book called The Down Low,
right?
Oprah brought him on her show, and she rarely talked about black issues, but that was one of the rare times that she did. And J.L. King implied that black men were not trustworthy. The fireman, he literally said the fireman, the mailman might be trying to get your woman, it might give her HIV. It was crazy. The bottom line is that show re-stigmatized black men again. And there's never been any clear focus on a national basis to humanize, care for, and focus on black men as being valuable. There's never been a Black Men's Lives Are Valuable campaign in this country. So the bottom line is that black men, regardless of the sexuality, because police brutality is feeding into the implication of the lack of value as well. The society, I mean, you talked about, I hate to not go too many places, but it's all relevant. We talked about during the elections that black men back off. All this is relevant. This attack on the black psyche, this attack on the black self-concept, the lack of valuing what black men go through. For example, we hear about black girl magic. We hear about the black women who have been politically powered in the Democratic Party. It's almost like black men don't exist. Now it's time to talk about rape. Now it's time to talk about what Trump did at his union speech. He only showed black people when he showed felons.
Yeah, criminality.
He didn't show black people. That whole thing creates a disorientation, a trauma impact, and a question in the subconscious of black people, am I valuable? So if you want black people who are at high risk, like black men in terms of HIV and AIDS, to reduce their behavior, there has to be a strategy, a technique, one that I've developed, that helps them to decode, unlearn, and recognize in this culture all of the messages that imply that they have a lack of worth.
So how have you been able to get that program, that initiative off the ground?
Well, I'll try to be brief with this one. As I mentioned, I developed the critical thinking and cultural affirmation model in the late 90s because of racism, white supremacy, both in blackface and whiteface. There was resistance to me because you think you're the first one to call me super black. They were calling me that back then. And it was something wrong with caring about black people. You know, just caring about black people means you're militant, you're angry, blah, blah, blah. You can't be just a rational human being who's concerned based on data and statistics about reversing a problem in your community. But that's how it was seen. And the gay community, as well as the HIV/AIDS community, is ran by white folks and the black people who love them. So there was lots of resistance to me. So it took me a lot to get this model put into the hands of the federal government for testing, to check its efficacy. To make a long story short, a sister named Dr. Nina Harawa, who's an epidemiologist in Los Angeles, heard about my model, heard reverberations about people being excited about it, and men saying it had an impact on them, and came to my agency, the Democracy Center in Los Angeles, and said, can we test it? It was tested over a 5-year period through very rigorous testing processes that was considered legitimate testing framework by the federal government, and it was proven to be efficacious and that the model worked. And what work means, to be clear, is that it took people from the disorientated non-clarity around reducing their risks to being clear enough to value themselves in their community. Because if you're willing to put yourself at risk in your community, there's clearly a lack of value for both. Right. Well, my model, which is a very detailed process, in the long run, have to realize, wait a minute, I'm valuable. My community is valuable. I'm not going to put us at risk anymore. I'm not going to put me at risk anymore. So what I think some people had a problem with is that core to black mental health is black mental clarity regarding the elements and impact of white supremacy on the black psyche. The impact of white supremacy on black people being reliably interested in self-preservation and self-protection. And if you are calling yourself an N-word and you're constantly hearing messages and images and looking at a media that only makes you a criminal like Trump just did at his union speech, and one more, and I'm gonna end with this, well, I know I'm going on a while, but what I learned through a lot of my research is that when there is a traumatizing situation on TV, like Dylann Roof murder, etc., we don't sit down with our children, I've said this before, and actually give them a chance to debrief, to say how I felt about that. And so the implication is that we can't talk about it. It's kind of like rape in the family.
Which is also why, for me, on national media, they immediately jump to, oh, black people forgiving. Exactly. I'm like, no, hold up. No, I mean, I ain't got that yet.
Exactly.
But that was the whole thing right after. They're like, oh, my God, they're just forgiving already. And I'm like, no. Because, see, white folks were not forgiving Muslims after 9/11.
Right. And that whole forgiving thing, which is part of the white strategy, is to create disorientation around black worth. So because if we have to forgive them, that means they're still superior.
So last question. What do you want the audience, what do you want folks to do next?
Ooh, a lot. Well, I want the audience...
We ain't got a lot of time, but go ahead.
I know. First, I want the audience to do its own research on CTCA, the Critical Thinking and Cultural Affirmation Model. You can go on, you can Google it and check out for yourself.
CTCA?
CTCA, Critical Thinking and Cultural Affirmation.
Got it.
That's what the model is called. I want black people to understand that HIV and AIDS is still here. Yeah. There are still black people dying from HIV and AIDS more than anybody else. They're now comparing the amount of HIV among black people, black men in particular, to sub-Saharan Africa where there's less resources. As a matter of fact, Uganda is doing better than African Americans when it comes to HIV and AIDS because they have more cultural cohesion than confused African American folks. Last thing, Dr. Carr mentioned the Haitian issue. I think we know by now that the Haitian blaming of HIV was racist, wrong, and not true, and that white people from Europe, white gay males from Europe, United States, went to Port-au-Prince and bought the bodies of poor people that they made poor and brought HIV there. When Connie Chung, who was the main person talking about it back in the day, found that out, she didn't recant. She was the main person to say it came from Haiti because she got the script. She never recanted. So all of these, and even the monkey thing got issues. You know, the green monkey thing. It did not come from a green monkey. No, of course not. So all of these implications that black people are to blame, that black men are to blame, and no intervention by black people. See, black people need to tell their children that white supremacy is a social corruption that makes being human a challenge because inhuman people are running things. And they need to also understand that it's wrong, not you. See, black men would be more involved in self-protection if they were clear that it's not them who's the problem. But white supremacy has a lot of us questioning ourselves, including we should protect ourselves during sexual interaction. And we have to teach our children and each other that we're valuable enough to not get sick, not get HIV, and not put ourselves at risk, and that we need to learn how to decode the normal white supremacy in the American landscape.
All right. Where can people get more information from you? There's a website they can go to?
You can go to the Black Men's Exchange National Headquarters Facebook page. That's where most of our information is on. You also can find us on Twitter at BMX National. And you also can find me by just Googling my name. And again, look up CTCA for yourself. It was approved by the federal government as an efficacious model. But now the CDC has backed off of behavioral models and they're now using drugs, PrEP, to be specific, as a primary means of preventing HIV, even though everybody can't use PrEP successfully. So behavior is important still, that we change our behavior to reduce our risk and be understood about that we're important enough to be saved from HIV.
All right. Dr. Cleo Manago, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a bunch. Going to a break. We'll be back at Roland Martin on the Field in just a moment.
The important thing is not how much money a person makes. It is what he does with it that matters. Business person, A.G. Gaston.
Y'all switch out. Stop talking. All right, y'all. Our HBCU Giving Day School is Denmark Technical College. That's www.denmarktech.edu. denmarktech.edu. All right, folks. Here's another one of our partners, Ford Cares. Calling all HBCU alumni, students, and leaders. Enter the Ford Motor Company HBCU Mobility Challenge. Can y'all calm down? I'm working here. Thank you. Can y'all win? You can enter the HBCU Mobility Challenge and win $25,000 for your school. Now, building on their long-term support of HBCUs, Ford is looking to improve mobility in HBCU communities through innovative solutions. The winning program will receive a grant of up to $25,000 to implement their proposal. Now, the deadline to apply is March 31st, 2019. Let me say it again. The deadline to apply is March 31st, 2019. I want you to go to FGB.Life, FGB.Life for more information and to apply. Ford goes further in our community, and we appreciate Ford Cares being one of the partners here with Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now, folks, yesterday we told you about Amber Evans, a well-known community activist from Columbus, Ohio. She's been missing for more than a week. Well, today the Columbus police tried searching a river near where her car was found abandoned, but the current was too swift. If you have any information about Amber Evans, please call 614-645-4624, 614-645-4624. Also, Tuesday would have been the 24th birthday of Trayvon Martin had he not been murdered by George Zimmerman. Now, remember, this case was really what launched, in many ways, the next phase of Black Lives Matter, is where the hashtag came from, and so many folks were stunned by it. And so, again, Trayvon would have been 24 years old on Tuesday. Now, today would have been the 32nd birthday of Sandra Bland. You recall she was the sister stopped by the police, by a state trooper in Waller County, Texas, for failure to signal a lane change. Now, this is the guy after he followed her and he was looking for something to charge her with. Now, after the trooper stopped her, it escalated the situation when he demanded she put out her cigarette, even though she was not legally required to do so. She died 3 days later in that particular jail. Her death was ruled a suicide. An investigation by the Texas authorities and the FBI found the jail violated its own procedures on visually checking on prisoners. And here we are nearly 4 years after her death, and the Waller County Jail still faces the same issues. On January 25th, a 34-year-old African-American, Evan Parker, was found hanging from his cell. He was taken to a local hospital and died 2 days later after suffering injuries from the hanging. Parker was on suicide watch at the time of his death, and his death occurred a month after an inspection determined jailers were not correctly observing the incarcerated people in their care. Mentally ill and suicidal people like Parker are supposed to be checked on every half hour. Inspectors found jailers looked in on them roughly every 74 minutes. That's what we're still facing there in Waller County, Texas. All right, folks, a California police officer is under investigation after a Marine veteran is accusing him of using excessive force. Now, Adrian Burrell started filming Officer David McLaughlin pull over Burrell's cousin in front of their home. Watch the video.
Why are you taking off like that, man? Huh? Why are you taking off like that? Get back.
No.
Get back.
Nope.
Keep your hands where you can see them. Keep your hands right up. You're interfering with me, my man? You're interfering, so you're going to go in the back of the car.
That's fine.
Okay. Dude, stop resisting.
I'm not resisting you.
Stop resisting.
I'm not resisting you. Put me on the ground then.
If you keep fighting me, I will.
I'm not fighting you.
Dude, stop fighting. You're going to go on the ground.
Burrell says he suffered a concussion from McLaughlin's use of force, which included slamming him into a wall and a pole. Burrell asked the officer to cuff him in the front after suffering injuries in the Marine Corps. After McLaughlin realized he was arresting a veteran, he changed his mind and uncuffed Burrell and thanked him for his service. But this isn't the first time Officer McLaughlin has been accused of behaving violently. Last August, he pulled his weapon out on a restaurant patron after a heated argument. He was off duty at the time. The patron was arrested and claimed McLaughlin slammed his face into the concrete during the arrest. McLaughlin has also engaged in 2 officer-involved shootings since he joined the force in 2004, and he remains on duty. I mean, this, Greg, is, we see the video. We see the distance between him and the officer. The reality is these officers do not want them being recorded, which is why they are against body cameras, because they want their side of the story told, because they don't want to have to deal with that video.
Well, absolutely. I mean, this man thought he can just control that man's black body. And, you know, in this instance, I would agree with you, CJ. some people need their ass whipped. And it would be Officer McLaughlin at this point. Because at the end of the day, I mean, and Dr. Monago laid it out for us. He did. I mean, what does it mean for black lives to have no value? These police like that just basically decide we don't have any value. You can do whatever you want.
CJ, he is standing on his porch. He's happening in his driveway. And the officer saying, oh, I need you to back up, back up, back up, when he was not even near the officer.
Oh, absolutely. This is a blatant case of where the officer needs to be investigated. He needs to have his gun and his shield taken away while he goes through this review. And then his full jacket needs to be pulled based on prior incidents and to determine whether or not he should stay on the force.
Well, Cleo, this is also why we have consent decrees.
Yeah, this is why we have it. But what I want us to look at is that the white dude, the cop, the brother was on the porch just filming, but he wanted to get over there and control him one way or the other and claim and imply that he was resisting and he was not.
Because again, those are, by reading the Sandra Bland story earlier, we all know now what are the code words. You're resisting.
Yes.
You're fighting back. Because those are the lies they've always been able to tell without video. Yeah. You can hear the brother. You hear his tone. Sir, I'm not resisting.
That's right.
I'm not resisting. And he never elevates his voice. The officer he's escalating the situation, just like the officer did with Sandra Bland, because they are trying to create the reaction.
But they're also completely resentful of you having the nerves to defy them even a little bit.
That's right.
Who do you think you are defying me?
That's right.
And they get off, I think in some cases on even a sexual level, they get off on the idea of taking a black body and being in absolute control of it, and they will kill your butt if you don't do what they say in many cases. And I want to say this, Sandra Bland, I don't believe she committed suicide. This other brother has some mental health issues, and I believe he did commit suicide, but I don't believe Sandra Bland committed suicide. I want to make that clear.
All right, folks, let's deal with this story here. Now, I already told you we already got enough ignorant, crazy white folks in America. Add the Italians to it. Now, check this here out. All right, this is Gucci, okay?
They have some black.
I want y'all to show. Come on, y'all, come on. Come on. Thank you. Wow. All right, so Gucci, y'all. Came up with the idea of creating this sweater.
No, sir.
$890.
No, sir. No, sir.
Y'all, this is a sweater.
No, sir.
Okay. This is a sweater from Gucci.
It's not real. It's supposed to
An
show.
actual sweater.
Those lips are made out of fabric.
They got their ass whooped on social media. Apologized. They've now pulled the sweater from stores and online and said, quote, we consider diversity to be fundamental value, fully upheld, respected, and at the forefront of every decision that we make.
What? How much?
But
$890.
$890.
Come on, man.
That's what they were charging for that sweater, which essentially is blackface.
No, it's black. It's a coon. It's a coon show. All you need is a hat and some white gloves, and you can go on stage.
If it wasn't for the disorientation that I talk about at CTCA, we would just not do nothing with Gucci ever again.
Right.
Because so what? They apologize, but to have the vision to even put that out there.
Gucci Mane need to change his name. Soulja Boy need to take off that Gucci headband.
It's very dehumanizing of black people.
It's similar to December when Prada, they sold these blackface keychains.
There were monkeys.
No, that one's worse. Anybody I saw walking down the street with that would be taking their life in their hands.
But what's worse is what's worse than all of this is some of us gonna go buy some Prada, some of us are gonna buy some Gucci.
Somebody might have that sweater.
Because just like black men who are putting themselves at risk for HIV, we are constant questioning of our worth as well. So when white people like Prada and Gucci put out racist, crazy stuff, we still go and buy it.
It's ridiculous.
It's the same mindset. Good thing that Gucci don't spread HIV that we know of.
And here, go to my computer, please, iPad. This was the Prada keychain that they were selling for $550.
Man, come on. We're not talking about Ralph Northern with a Klan outfit on a blackface. This is 2019.
No, see, white people being white people is going to happen. We need to have a transformation around tolerance of white supremacy.
Sure.
And stop allowing ourselves to be played and thinking that we are doing something wrong by resisting white supremacy.
Right. Cleo, go ahead. I'm sorry, CJ, go ahead.
I'm waiting for the other celebrities and athletes that are wearing it, which is Rihanna. I'm looking at the list right here.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Wearing Gucci.
Wearing Gucci. Blake Lively, Brad Pitt, didn't he just do
Plan B? He making all the black movies.
Right. He got Bill Street out for an Oscar.
Of course, Plan B. Anytime you see him, that's our great white movie father.
We need to, at the Oscars, whatever is coming up, I'm hoping nobody be wearing Gucci on the runway.
How about that?
See,
right. Well,
that's a sign of intelligence right there.
Yeah.
Well, we shall see what happens. All right, y'all. We got to go. It's been quite an eventful show. We want you to support Roland Martin Unfiltered by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Here's the deal.
My organization wants to give you $1,000, by the way.
All right.
I appreciate that, my brother. I appreciate that. And I need y'all to understand, okay, there's no other show like this, all right? I told you, a discussion about National Black HIV/AIDS Day is not happening on cable news networks, okay? A real discussion about Gucci is not happening on other networks. We keep talking about needing our own. We also got to support our own. We got to fund our own freedom. And so, yes, we have advertisers who are partners with us, but that's not enough for us to do what we do. So we want you, you can use Cash App, PayPal, use whatever means you want to use to support the show. Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com to join. Some folks, if you want to give every month, that's great. You only want to give one time in a year, that's great. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our supporters to give at least an average of $50 each for the year in order to make this show possible. This is about being independent and having our own. That's why it's important. So we want you to support us. Go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Now, here's what's coming up next, okay? I was in LA in October, had an unbelievable conversation about voting with comedian Ali Sadiq. But it's not just about voting. This brother spent time in prison, and you've got to watch this interview. When you listen to Ali talk about the older brothers pulling him aside in prison, telling him, you don't belong here. Wait till you hear the story of what they did on the day of the Million Man March in prison. I'm telling y'all, I have done a ton of interviews over the course of my career, and this ranks as one of the best, most insightful interviews I've done. You don't want to miss it. So we're going to end this live stream of this show, and then we're going to launch the interview with Ali Sadiq right after we're done. You do not want to miss it. I got to go. Holla.